I need blank to live on. How much do I need to retire? And we're going to start today with $45,000. So I need $45,000 in order to retire. How much do I need in retirement savings? So we're going to go through that today here on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. We're going to go through multiple scenarios. One, retiring at 60 and taking Social Security benefits at 67. And the second scenario, retiring at 60 and taking Social Security benefits at 62. Understanding how much in retirement savings we need, claiming Social Security at both ages, and surprisingly, you might find you need less money if you claim Social Security early. So hang on for that. All right, there's three important factors that you need to consider when you're asking yourself, how much do I need in retirement savings to retire? The first factor you want to consider is, when am I going to retire? Am I going to retire at age 55? Am I going to retire at age 60? Am I going to retire at 65? That's the first thing you want to think about. The second factor you need to consider is, where is my retirement income going to come from? Social Security, retirement investments, pensions, rental income. Where is my retirement income going to come from? And the third factor you need to consider is, what are my expenses and the cost of living in the state, city, county, country, wherever you're going to retire. What is my cost of living and expenses going to be throughout my retirement? Now, let's go through the first factor. When am I going to retire? It's very important to understand when you're going to retire and the age implications of retiring at that age. Let's think about it. What if you retire at 55? If you retire at 55, you have 7 years before you're first eligible for Social Security at 62. You have 12 years before you're eligible for full retirement age Social Security benefits at 67, and you have 15 years before you get to 70. So you've got this long gap before Social Security benefits kick in. Where's your retirement income going to come from? Is it going to come from rental income? Is it going to come from part-time work? Is it going to come from your retirement investing accounts? You've really got to think about that if you want to retire at 55. Remember, if you claim Social Security benefits at 62, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. If you claim Social Security benefits at 67, or your full retirement age, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefits. And if you wait till 70, if you're an overachiever and a broccoli eater, you're going to get 124% of your full retirement benefit. So if you retire at 55, you have to consider the runway, the longevity, before you start claiming Social Security benefits. Another factor to consider if you're going to retire at 55 is, where's my retirement income going to come from? If you have a 401k or an IRA and you're under the age of 59 and a half, you will get a 10% penalty if you pull money out of those accounts under the age of 59 and a half. Now, there's two rules you need to understand, and we're not going to go into them very long today. I've got other videos on these rules. But the first rule is called the Rule of 55. The Rule of 55 says if you are 55 years or older and you get terminated, or you leave your job, or you quit or you retire, you can use your current 401k for retirement income without the 10% penalty. Now, you still pay taxes on any distributions from your 401k, but there's no penalty. And it's only your current 401k. So if you have old 401ks that are sitting at old jobs, or you've rolled those over to IRAs, that's not considered. Only your current job. So, little secret here, if you have old 401ks or IRAs sitting elsewhere and you want to retire at 55, roll those over, reverse roll over those into your 401k. Now, not every 401k plan allows this. Make sure you check with your plan admin. The second rule, if you're retiring at 55, is what they call a 72T. A 72T is for people who have most of their money in IRAs and they don't have access to a 401k. A 72T is simply taking substantially equal periodic payments, or SEPP, from your IRA. It's a schedule that you set up with your accountant. Make sure you set it up with an accountant or a CPA. It comes directly out of your IRA. It's for 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever's longer. And you want to make sure you do not mess it up, meaning you want to take what you have to take every year, or the IRS says, hey, we're going to penalize you for this year and all the years you've already been starting this thing. So it's very important to understand, if you're going to retire at 55, how are you going to get retirement income? Understand the rules surrounding getting that retirement income. Now, keep in mind, if you retire at 60 or 65, you've already passed the 59 and a half rule. So the thought process retiring at 60 and 65 is, when am I going to take Social Security? If you retire at 60, you've got 2 years before you get to 62. So you've got 2 years of retirement income that's got to come out of your retirement investments. If you retire at 65, you're eligible for Social Security, but you're 2 years away from full retirement age. Does it make sense to wait those 2 years? That's why we do a financial EKG for clients. That's why we do a complete and comprehensive retirement plan, because we want to factor in all these various factors. Keep in mind, in the middle of all this, your money that's invested in the stock market still has sequence of return risk on it. Now, what is sequence of return risk? Sequence of return risk is essentially you step into retirement at age 60 and the market goes down. And the first year you lose 10%. The second year you lose 5%. Third year you lose 7%. And you're like, oh my gosh, Drew, the market keeps going down. Think about 2000 to 2003, 2007 to 2009. That's sequence of return risk. Again, that's why you want to plan. When are you going to retire? Where's your retirement income going to come from? And how are my investments allocated for that retirement? All right, the second factor you want to consider if you're asking yourself, how much do I need to retire, is where is my retirement income going to come from when I retire? So we've got when are we going to retire? How about the where? Where is our retirement income going to come from? Is it going to come from Social Security? How about any pensions? What about rental income? Or our investments? Where is our retirement income going to come from? And you want to understand the taxes that are associated with all three of these areas, because Social Security is taxed differently than your retirement investments. Rental income is taxed differently than your investments in Social Security. Pensions are taxed differently. And depending on the state that you live in, Social Security is not taxed in California. What if you live in California? Your Social Security is not taxed. That needs to be calculated in. So where is our retirement income going to come from? And when are we going to retire? Those are some main factors when thinking about how much do I need to retire? All right, the third factor, the final factor that we need to consider before we get into the calculations on the board of how much do I need to retire is our expenses. Our expenses. What is our expenses or our cost of living in the area that we're going to live? Maybe you're going to live in California, Texas, Wyoming, Iowa, Massachusetts, Florida, Kentucky, go Big Blue. What's your cost of living going to be? What are your expenses going to be in that state? Maybe you're going to move overseas. Well, if you move overseas, your cost of living is going to be a lot different than if you're in America. What are your expenses going to be when you retire? Now, here's what I want you to think about. There's a couple expenses that we need to consider when we're doing our complete retirement plan, or when you're planning out when, where, and how am I going to retire. The first type of expense you want to think about is your fixed expenses. These are expenses that are not going to go away. If you live in America, you're always going to have a utility bill. Now, that utility bill could go up based on inflation, right? I live in Florida. My utility bill has gone through the roof since the last 2 years. Your grocery bill, you're always going to eat. That's a fixed expense. It's always going to be there. That doesn't mean that that fixed expense can't change, right? To me, it's going to be there. It's fixed. I'm going to eat. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to pay for electricity and air conditioning. I'm going to stream, Kentucky football games and the Rays baseball games. Those are fixed expenses. They're always going to be there. They could have variable costs associated with them, meaning the cost can go up and down for my streaming bill, the cost can go up and down for my air conditioner, but those are fixed. They're always going to be there. So the first type of expense you want to think about is fixed. The second type of expense you want to think about when in retirement is variable. And a variable expense, to me, is an expense that's not fixed. Okay, because you can have fixed and variable, and you have variable but not fixed. Meaning, maybe you want to travel every year and you want to spend a certain amount of money on travel. Well, one year you may go to Wyoming to do the Yellowstone thing and be a rancher, and the next year you may go to Disney World. The costs are going to be slightly different for both of those. So that's a variable expense. Maybe you need a new car and you want to start pricing that in. That's going to be a one-time variable expense. And so you got to understand this. This has to be in your retirement plan. The other thing you want to consider is your personal inflation rate. Now, what is a personal inflation rate? A personal inflation rate is your inflation rate for your specific inflation expenses. Here, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a $1,000 mortgage payment. Okay, that's your mortgage payment. It's $1,000. Okay, and let's say you have a $500 fixed expense for your cable bill. Okay, now obviously, hopefully, you don't have a $500 cable bill. If you do, you need a stream. But you got a $1,000 mortgage and you have a $500 cable bill. Your cable bill can go up, right? I have Spectrum. It goes up every year. So that's a cable bill. It's going to go up. Your mortgage payment is going to be the same mortgage payment every month for the length of that mortgage. There's also a fixed interest rate on that mortgage, and there's not inflation. So when we're calculating in our expenses, the mortgage payment has a 0% inflation. The cable bill has a 3% inflation. And so your overall inflation rate for those two expenses might be 2% or 1.8 or whatever that might be. And so you want to understand what is your personal inflation rate. Because if you take all your expenses and put it at 3%, you're going to get an inaccurate figure on how much you need to retire. So you want to understand that. All right? So let's get into the calculations now. I need $45,000 to live on. How much do I need in retirement savings? All right, I'm 60 years old. I have $45,000 in retirement expenses. That's how much I need to live on. How much do I need in retirement savings? That's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at this scenario, retiring at 60, claiming Social Security benefits at 67. Now, we're also going to do claiming Social Security benefits at 62 and see the difference in the two scenarios. All right, so let's look at this. We're 60 years old. We have $45,000 in expenses. That's how much we want to live on, $45,000. We have Social Security at 67 of $2,850. So $2,850 is our Social Security benefit. If we take it early, if we take it at 70, it would be like $1,995. That's 70% of that. So we have to ask ourselves, remember, 60 to 67, where's our retirement income going to come from? The when of retirement is we're retiring at 60. The where is now where's our investments, or where's the income going to come from? Well, it's got to come out of our investments. So $45,000 is what we need each year. We're going to multiply that by 7 years, so 60 to 67. That gives us $315,000. Now this is the base. $315,000 is what we need in retirement income over a 7-year period. Now, we're going to take that $315,000 and we're going to multiply it by 3%. The reason we're doing that is for inflation. So with inflation, we come to $324,450. That's with inflation. And we're going to look at a 4% rate of return on this money from 60 to 67. Now, when we get to 67, our expenses have gone from $45,000 to $55,344. That's a 3% inflation rate. We're going to multiply that by 20 years. So we're going to go 67 to 87, okay? Now, male, female, I think male average age right now is like 84, female's 86. So I'm going to go to 87. Obviously, you can take this as long as you want, and you can multiply this out. Now, keep in mind, we're on the board now. This is a very simplified understanding of how much we need to retire. The next step, once we get all this figured out, is to go into the software to start calculating in taxes, exact inflation rates. where our retirement investments are allocated for the risk, the different Social Security claiming strategies, single, married, long-term care, sequence of return risk. There's a lot of other factors that we need to consider in the software. But the board's going to tell us if we're ready to get to the software, and then we move into the financial EKG to determine, can I retire? How long is our money going to last, right? Because we want to know, like, I want to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. I call this, the board, I call this rock planning. This is rock planning. If you know anything, a rock is sturdy. I like the parable that Jesus told. The man who built his house on the rock, when the storms of life came, his house stood sturdy. We're building our retirement plan on the rock. I call it retire on confident knowledge. Okay? So let's go to that. So we're 67. Now our expenses are $55,344. We multiply that by 20 years. That's $1 million. So 1,106,886. But we started taking Social Security of $2,850 at 67. So we multiply that by 12 for a year's worth of Social Security, multiply that by 20 for 20 years, and that's $684,000. So I take the $1,106,000, I subtract out the $684,000, and that gives me $422,886 times 3% for inflation. So that puts us at $435,572. I take that number, I add it to the original figure, the 324, that's the 60 to 67, and that gives me a $760,000 figure. 4% rate of return is what we're assuming in retirement. Now keep in mind, Social Security is going to have a cost of living adjustment on it. So you'll have a COLA on this $2,850. COLAs aren't guaranteed, right? If you don't get a COLA, that means inflation wasn't measured that year by what the Fed says inflation is. Now the Fed doesn't go to the grocery store or drive cars. I think they're zombies because they don't measure actual inflationary things. I buy raspberries. Those things have inflation on them. But the COLA increase is going to be on Social Security, which will lower this number, right? It's going to lower that overall number that we need. It's going to make this 684 higher, but it's going to lower what we need in retirement savings, okay? So that means this value could be less because of the COLAs with Social Security. So there's a lot of factors, again, that need to go into the software to create this retirement plan, but this is the rock to where we're building. So this is 67. Can I retire at 60 with $45,000 in retirement expenses? How much do I need to live off of? Or how much do I need to have saved? $760,022. Now, remember, we just went through the scenario of claiming Social Security at 67. Now we're going to look at claiming Social Security at 62 to see if there's any difference in the amount of money needed to retire. All right, so let's look at this. We're 60 years old. We have a $45,000 retirement income need. Social Security at 67 is $2,850. That's 100% of our full retirement benefit. So that's at 67. But we're going to claim Social Security at 62, which is $1,995. This is 70% of our full retirement benefit. So 1995, that was a good year. I was 10 years old. I was watching the Atlanta Braves on TBS. Did they win the World Series in 1995? I think it was 1997 they won the World Series, or maybe, I don't remember. Google it and leave it in the comments section. Make sure I'm right on this. Now, at 60 years old, we need $45,000 in retirement income. So that's 2 years. Between 60 and 62, we need $45,000 a year plus inflation. So that's $90,000 a year plus 3% for inflation, which puts us at $92,700. So $92,700. So that's for these first 2 years, we need $92,700. Now, come year 62, our expenses have gone from $45,000 to $47,740. That's inflation, right? That's easy inflation. We're going to multiply that by 25 years. The reason we're using 25 years is we're going from 62 to 87. That's 25 years. I'm using 87 because that's the longevity for a female today, okay? Male's 82, 84, somewhere around there. Female, I think, is 85 to 87, whatever. I'm just going to use the longest age out that I could find, okay? Now, if you want to do 90, 95, just increase your years. So 47,740, we're going to multiply that by 25. So that's $1,193,512. Sounds like a lot, right? That's a lot of money. But Social Security, right? It's kicking on. 1995. What was the #1 song in 1995? Was it Goo Goo Dolls or something? I don't know. Google it. Leave it in the comment section. Let's have a throwback video. So $1,995. We multiply that by 12. That's for a year. We multiply that by 25, not 20. 25. That's $598,500. Now let me check my math because I put a 20 on the board here. 1995, multiply that by 12, multiply that by 25. Yep, $598,500. See, aren't you glad we do these videos with a calculator too? So this is what we need for retirement income, but that's going to be supplemented by Social Security. So we're going to subtract out Social Security. So 1,1 subtracted from about 600,000 puts us at 595,012. We're going to multiply that by 3% inflation. You see that? There's inflation. That's 612,862. So take that 612,862, add it to the 92,700. That's 703,132. Now, keep in mind, this is on the board. This is a foundational strategy. Now we've got to take this, we've got to put it in the software because we have to look at taxes. We got to look at the state that you live in. We've got to look at long-term care. We've got to look at your retirement investments and the allocations. That's what we do with a financial EKG. And if you want one, go into the description below, get on our calendar, let's talk about that. But that's where we're going to start to see, can I retire based on my retirement income need? Now, we did this for 67. What was the difference? This is claiming Social Security at 67. This is claiming at 62. Doing the same math, just different ages, right? Where we're claiming Social Security. So let's subtract the two. So 56,890. So actually claiming Social Security early means we need less saved for retirement. You see that? Man, isn't that cool? Like, math don't lie. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other factors that need to be calculated into this. Social Security is going to have a COLA increase on it. I mean, this is going to go up, but this is going to come down, right? We're not going to need as much saved because COLA is going to go up. There's going to be sequence of return risk on your money, meaning the market's going to do this. How is that allocated? Dividends, interest, annuity payments, Social Security, whatever. But this is where we start. And I hope this has helped. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.